Welcome to the Charles Rolls Heritage Trust, which is a registered charity, and to this special commemoration for the Honourable Charles Rolls, co-founder of Rolls-Royce Limited, and the first international aviation meeting held in Great Britain during 1910 at Southbourne in Bournemouth. A situation beyond our control prevented our annual commemoration on the 12th of July in 2020 at the Memorial Plaque to Rolls, which is located in the private grounds of St Peter's Catholic School in Southbourne. Each year since 2010, when Bournemouth held its Bi-Centenary celebrations, a commemoration has been run with a small group of people and members of the local Rolls-Royce Enthusiasts Club, attended by the Mayor of Bournemouth. So in this video we will recall the events of 2010 and also mimic our usual annual event. But first, let's see where it happened. Starting off with England, and now looking to the south, we can see the Isle of Wight, and to the west is Bournemouth. And now we can see the extent of Bournemouth Bay, and to the right of the picture, before reaching the promontory of Hengstbury Head, is Southbourne. The picture shows the green area of the sports field of St Peter's School, and in the top corner we can see the memorial plaque to the Honourable Charles Rolls, which is where our commemorations take place. So how did Bournemouth become the setting for this important and unique aviation meeting in 1910? The council wished to celebrate the town's centenary in the style of the French carnivals of the day, with decorated floats and battles of flowers. During this process, they met up with the French International Aviation Federation, which was the leader in Europe at the time. They had run a successful international aviation meeting in Rome in 1909 and wanted to hold a similar event in England, and hence the liaison was created. With 2 weeks of fun planned, the aviation meeting occupied the second half, commencing the 11th of July. The poster shows the type of aircraft that Rolls flew, although there were aircraft of every shape and size, for example monoplanes, biplanes and triplanes, air-cooled engines and water-cooled engines, and the list goes on. Note that in the bottom right-hand corner that Bournemouth has declared itself as the Riviera of England. Move on 100 years, and again Bournemouth wanted to celebrate. This time it's Bi-Centenary, and it was also appropriate to celebrate the centenary of the aviation meeting and the tragic loss of the aviator who had become a household name of ballooning, car racing, and the first return crossing of the English Channel. With 4 days of events planned, it was appropriate that the first day involved the children of St Catherine's School, which is located in Rolls Drive. Pupils were taken out to Hengstbury Head to watch a Spitfire flying display by Phil O'Dell, the chief test pilot of Rolls-Royce plc, the aero engine company. The last image captures the inspiration of the immortal Spitfire. After the morning flying display, Phil O'Dell came to unveil a memorial plaque that Rolls-Royce plc, the aero engine company, had refurbished. But before that, the assembled crowd were treated to a surprise.
Rolls had a remarkable effect on aviation, and we will now see his legacy.
The inscription on the face of the original stone reads, "This stone commemorates the Honourable Charles Stuart Rolls, who was killed in a flying accident near this spot on the 12th of July 1910, the first Briton to die in powered flight." The new base reads, "This memorial was refurbished by Rolls-Royce plc 12th of July 2010 to commemorate the centenary of the death of the Honourable Charles Rolls." In the Spitfire flypast we just heard, aviation movie fans may have recognised the stirring music Ron Goodwin wrote for the film of 633 Squadron. The author of the book was the late Frederick E. Smith, who lived in Southbourne and was interviewed at the next day's exhibition. At the exhibition, Rolls-Royce plc provided a 6-foot by 6-foot pop-up stand, still used today, as a focal point in front of which Roger James, Community Relations Manager from Rolls-Royce, presented the head teacher Tony McCaffrey with a statuette of Rolls to be displayed in the school. Standing by is the late Tony Harrington MBE, who is the local coordinator for all the events and the founder of the group that has become the Charles Rolls Heritage Trust. A great attraction was a parade of Rolls-Royce cars, of which a few are shown here. Our annual commemorations have also started with a good line-up, and with visitors awaiting arrival of the mayor. Then the chairman has to get everyone seated. The bear is no trouble, and he knows how to stay dry when it rains. At last, we can get on with the speeches. A few of our speakers from previous years are shown here. Roger James, formerly of Rolls-Royce, who coordinated the 2010 commemoration and has been a regular visitor. Samantha Bumford, who was Miss Poole in 2018, and she explained about her charity commitments. MP Tobias Elwood, who's had an interest since before 2010, and Father Kevin, who has officiated several times. And now for our first 2020 speaker, Bill Hoodless, Deputy Chairman and Treasurer of the Trust.
There follow some key moments in Bournemouth's history leading up to the 1910 centenary. This is a picture of Isaac Gulliver, who was a major smuggler in his day until getting the King's pardon in 1782, a big local industry. In fact, he carried on smuggling after that date. He had the proud boast that he had never killed a man. Very hard to recognise today, but this is a map of Bournemouth town centre in 1810. There were just 3 buildings: the Taps Arms, Symes Cottage and Decoy Cottage. And that was just after the founder of Bournemouth, Lewis Tregonwell, had appeared on the scene. Here he is, captain of the Dorset Rangers, who were tasked with defending the coast against a possible Napoleonic invasion and also tackling smuggling. He is recognised as the founder of Bournemouth as a watering place in 1810, and he built the first big house in what is now the town centre. The first major development was in 1838, when Jarvis built some 16 villas in Westover Road, together with the Bath Hotel and St Peter's Church. An engraving from 1842. Although Tregonwell had built his summer residence at the mansion, which is now part of the Exeter Hotel, very little had happened until the Westover Road villas, but that really started things off. And here in 1876 is a view of the pier approach after a huge storm, the viewpoint being the West Cliff, bathing machines, baths and a pier hotel on the site of what is now the pavilion. Very much the same era. Beach entertainment 3 times daily in 1877. Whilst the Bournemouth Commissioners under the 1856 Bournemouth Improvement Act had done an awful lot to press on with the town, again in this photograph we are in 1876, and this is Boscombe Gardens, The Chine Hotel is in the distance, and the covering for the Boscombe Spa, the thatched roof in the foreground, can be seen. Some idea of Bournemouth expansion is gained because Boscombe had a population of 27 in 1841, but 60 years later, in 1901, it was 9,600. Moving right along to the turn of the century, here is a postcard from 1903. Bournemouth is now a thriving resort. It is full of Edwardian elegance. It had become a borough in 1890 and a county borough in 1900. Yet, for the settlements which were ancient along the River Stour, not very much had changed. This 1905 postcard from a lady called Flo shows rural Iford, very much thatched cottages and cattle in the main road. We have now reached 1907, just 3 years before the 1910 aviation meeting and Rolls' tragic death. This little known postcard gives an idea of the square at the time. The lamp standard is being maintained and the viewpoint is towards what is now Debenhams. And so the centenary is planned, and the whimsical cartoon as ever from the Bournemouth graphic tells a story. The main character is the chairman of the Centenary Fates Committee, F.J. Bell. He's portrayed as a hen and is laying eggs because he's attracting the big spenders. £30,000 guarantee fund, 340 people worked hard for 6 months. The whole thing was a huge enterprise. He says, by advertising and its artful aid, behold the egg for Bournemouth I have laid. Yes, it was a risk, but it was a success. The culmination of 100 years of fast growth in the town. Finally, another example of the fanciful humour of the times. The Bourne stream is exiting from the mouth of a lady, and behind her is Tregonwell, the founder's house. There are seagulls and an audience. Yes, Bournemouth is set fair for the next 100 years.
Our next speaker joined the Trust late last year.
My name is Russell Brenner, and I've been a Rolls-Royce enthusiast all of my life, starting with when my parents' friends came to our home in a Silver Shadow. After that, I had the aim to want to own one day, and that is where the story began, with the love of everything Rolls-Royce. I'm going to give you some short history on the story of the Honourable Charles Stuart Rolls and the Rolls-Royce car connection. In 1903, Charles Rolls set up a car dealership in London called CS Rolls & Co. with the idea of finding high quality cars for friends amongst other things. He imported and sold Peugeot and Minerva cars at the time. On the 4th of May 1904, Henry Edmonds, a friend of Charles Rolls and Henry Royce, arranged the meeting between them. This took place at the Midland Hotel in Manchester. A partnership was subsequently agreed with the motor cars carrying the name Rolls-Royce. Charles Rolls would promote and market the cars through his car dealership, CS Rolls & Co., and Henry Royce would build the cars. By 1907, Rolls-Royce had bought CS Rolls & Co. Claude Johnson, who was already working with Charles Rolls, was joint manager of Rolls-Royce and described himself as the hyphen in Rolls-Royce. Also in 1907, Rolls-Royce introduced the 40-50 horsepower known as the Silver Ghost. This motor car was the start of the phrase best car in the world. It actually came from the magazine Autocar, and this has continued for over 100 plus years. In 1910, unfortunately, Charles Rolls had the fatal air crash in Bournemouth. It was Claude Johnson who continued to run Rolls-Royce, as Royce had health issues at that time. During the same period of 1910, personal mascots were being adopted on cars, and Rolls-Royce were concerned about this. A more dignified and graceful mascot was sought, and the Spirit of Ecstasy was designed, and this became an option from 1911. It was standard in later years. Production of Rolls-Royce began in Manchester, then moved to Derby, then Crewe, and are now built at Goodwood. Over the time, luxury has been second to none, with a collection of amazing motor cars. In 1931, Rolls-Royce bought Bentley Motors and began marketing the two brands, with both being built in Derby. The Rolls-Royce badge was originally in red and changed to black in 1933 because it looked more in keeping. Over the next 100 plus years, a string of luxury Rolls-Royce cars were built right up to today, where the latest RR is the new Cullinan, an SUV with a 6.75 litre V12 engine. Charles Rolls in all this time is the one half of the partnership, and that is my interest in the Charles Rolls Heritage Trust, and of course Rolls-Royce Motor Cars. He was a founder member of the RAC as well as the Royal Aero Club.
The Bournemouth Mayor of the time has attended the previous events, and in 2019 we're reminded of the local aviation pioneer William McArdle, a garage owner, who entertained the crowds in 1910. The commemoration is completed by the Mayor laying a floral tribute on the memorial plaque to acknowledge the loss of such a great pioneer. The objective of the Trust is to educate the public regarding Rolls and the aviation meeting. One way we have done this is in collaboration with St Peter's School to sponsor a glider competition to make a hand-launched glider and launch it so that it lands within a target area which emulated Rolls' last flight. 240 pupils in 8 tutor groups took part in the finals on the 21st of June 2019. The concepts of STEM, that is, science, technology, engineering and mathematics, were utilised, and designs were assessed for creativity, stability in flight, quality of manufacturing, and lastly, of course, the quality of the tutor group support, which group cheered the ladders. 2 trustees attended to award prizes. One of those was Graham Lake, who has a significant collection of artefacts, so I thought we may hear a little from him.
Hello, my name is Graham Lake. I'm one of the trustees of the Charles Rolls Heritage Trust. I've been asked to talk to you today about some of the artefacts that I've collected over the years related to the work of the Trust and the Bournemouth Aviation meeting of July 1910. This artist's impression, showing a view over Christchurch towards Hainsbury Head across the area used as the aerodrome in 1910, looking southeast, also shows a couple of aircraft in airborne over the area there. I've also identified how effectively I managed to obtain these artifacts. Almost always it's through eBay, by use of Google, or Delcamp, another collector's site. The Illustrated London News is a widely distributed society newspaper in effect. And here we have an extract from it in 1910 showing an illustration of the aerodrome at Southbourne, aircraft participating in the aviation meeting, and some photographs around the edge there of some of the pilots that took part. Charles Rolls is noted on the bottom left. Of course, the centenary fetes and the aviation meeting had programs. They're quite hard to find and they're usually quite battered for obvious reasons. I managed to get these two some time ago, and they contain all the details of the events through the week, the dates, locations, of course, advertising from the time, maps, tram routes, all that sort of thing. And in the International Aviation Meeting program, there's also the list of all of the pilots. There's the signals that are used in the aerodrome to show you which aircraft is flying and which event is actually underway. On the left here depicted one of the pages from the flying program, and you see the names of the pilots in red there, and the coding that was used on the signaling tower for each pilot. Then the type of aircraft off to the right with the power plant details as well. And there are several pages of this. And I put up two aircraft. These are both postcards. They're both quite rare, and you may not have seen them before. The one at the top is William McArdle flying. Now, McArdle was, I think, the only local pilot. I believe he had a car dealership in Holdenhurst Road, and he set up a flying school, and I think that was done with J. Armstrong Drexel. Drexel is there. He's an American, and he's actually the grandson of the founder of JP Morgan Bank, which is the largest employer in Bournemouth now. So a little bit of local connection there. These are views of postcards that you're not perhaps used to seeing. Very often postcards related to the Bournemouth event have not been used, but those that have are often much more interesting for the content that they contain. I've shown two examples here. On the left is a rather mundane and typical message that you'd find on a postcard. They're much like the WhatsApp messages or text messages of today, and we use for similar purposes. This one does relate to the aviation meeting, as you can see, but doesn't say anything significant. On the right, however, it's much more significant because it talks about lady passengers being taken for a flight by Claude Graham White and being charged £25 for the privilege. And is obviously a conversation between two wealthy young ladies who it seems have a rival, but do give you an idea of what life was like at that time. £25, by the way, is about £400 in today's money, so that was quite an expensive flight for 10 minutes. This perhaps is more of the view that you're used to seeing with postcards, so I've got three relevant to the aviation meeting and the Bournemouth Centenary fates. They're quite unusual. You can see top left some pilots shown as if at Bournemouth, another one of flying at Bournemouth at the time, and then the Centenary fate art history, which I think is quite special. And again, good examples of the kinds of things that you can find on the internet. Now, this is an unusual photograph. It shows an aircraft over Boscombe High Street, just outside the arcade there, above a tram. And it's a photograph, actually, it was taken for the Bournemouth Carriage Company, the operator of the trams at the time. It's unusual, A, because it's in Boscombe and undoubtedly related to the aviation meeting. It's probably Claude Graham White, who was one of the first to take a camera up into the air. In fact, one of the other pilots at the meeting, Moore Brabazon, was the first person to get involved in aerial photography, so it was really very much at its infancy at that time. But this is a rare picture and a good find for the collection. In addition to Rolls, there were a number of other famous pilots at the Bournemouth event. I've shown Rolls in the postcard on the bottom left here, but Colonel Cody was also flying at Bournemouth. He was the man that undertook the first powered flight in the United Kingdom. That took place in late 1908, so not much time really before the Bournemouth meeting. Reporting of the event was quite widespread. Here we've got a copy of Flight Magazine from July the 16th, 1910, and Flight Magazine still runs today, and there were many other media outlets that reported the event from newspapers and magazines around the world, in fact. This particular edition of Flight Magazine included a day-by-day account of the meeting. I've illustrated some of that on the image on the right here, and includes the actual competitive events, the activities of the pilots, the description of the machines they were using, and general information of the week in quite some detail. Flight Magazine of July the 16th included these two illustrations that I've included here. On the left you see another of the pilots, Radley, descending to land. It's interesting because it shows you the angle of descent, and that close to the ground today that would be unusual in a light aircraft of the modern kind. but it gives you an idea of the kind of thing that Rolls was attempting with his spot landing, during which he crashed. On the right hand side you can see a graphic depicting the track of Rolls' last flight, and you can see that he was attempting to land into wind, which would have reduced his ground speed, so very sensible. But you also see that he flew over the grandstand, which meant that his approach would by necessity have been very steep, and it was in arresting that descent that the aircraft was overstressed and disintegrated, leading to his fatality. When it comes to artifacts recording the Rolls tragedy related to Bournemouth, you will find postcards. I've shown two here. On the left is another of the pilots, Moraine, wearing a black armband while still at Bournemouth, as you can see. This is quite a rare shot of him. And then above right, you can see a photograph of Rolls preparing for his famous and record-breaking double crossing of the English Channel, taken at Dover before he undertook that flight. This is a French postcard, as you can see, but it also refers to the tragedy at Bournemouth, which took place a few weeks after this Channel crossing event. And in the bottom right, we've got a first aid cover, in effect a Concorde stamp, noting the Bournemouth event in 1910, showing the location of the aerodrome at the time, undeveloped, no housing, as you can see, obviously. And then in 1970, 50 years ago, already the site was completely developed and covered in housing, almost completely, aside from the playing field at St. Peter's School. So this brings my presentation to a close. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you've been stimulated to go and find some of your own artifacts. There are certainly plenty of things out there, and if you want any information or want to know anything more about the Trust, then don't hesitate to contact us directly. Thank you very much.
We showed a map at the beginning of the video, and it can be used to show another element to our story. The first blue arrow shows where Rolls died. The second blue arrow shows where Henry Royce died, and midway the yellow arrow shows Calshot, the site of the Schneider Trophy competition, when Great Britain won the trophy outright. R.J. Mitchell of Supermarine had joined with Henry Royce to prepare the S6B seaplane racer, powered by the Rolls-Royce R engine, to produce a winning combination. The picture shows the two at Calshot, where Royce had signed in as mechanic. The R engine that Royce produced was the forerunner of the famous Merlin, which powered the Spitfire and Hurricanes during the Battle of Britain, and in our second photograph can be seen at the front of the seaplane racer. We hope you have enjoyed our video, and to finish, here is a short summary of Rolls' legacies and a map of the flying ground where he met his untimely end. In the words of Rolls, all good engineering calls for casualties, so why not?